Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to do an installation of an antenna on a vehicle. This antenna is going into the E-band. So the E-band is centered around about 153 megs, although it goes down to 150 and goes up to about 155. Now my favourite antenna is this antenna. It's a CD284170 series antenna. As you can see from the right hand corner up here, it's capable of tuning all the way from 148 to 174 megs. The tuning diagram is at the bottom here, so along the bottom we've got frequency and up the side we've got length. So we're actually going to trim this antenna, the length, and it's marked A, and there's A there, there's the diagram that shows you how to measure the A, and we're going to trim it to the correct frequency. The other thing that's on this diagram which is vitally important is not only a description of how you terminate the antenna, but there's also a visual indication of how you terminate the antenna. Now I understand that the first thing that gets thrown away when you open the packet of the antenna is this instruction diagram. However, it's probably the most important piece in the packet. You'll find it a great help. Okay, now the reason why I love this antenna is you don't need a soldering iron. All the terminations are done with a pair of scissors, a tape measure to measure the length, some snippers to dice the antenna at the right point. You will need something to undo the little grub screw which is on the diagram. The little grub screw is just there. And you'll need something to strip the cable with. It's a great assistance to do that. I also use a stainless steel rule because I find it great to measure the 70mm with a stainless steel rule. Now we're going to make a start on the vehicle. The most important thing to do when you're working in a vehicle here is don't snip this cable short. Don't drag it out so it's tight and then go like that, because if you need to re-terminate this antenna, you'll have to replace the cable or do a joint. So it's better to actually give yourselves a little bit of slack. We'll come back here and there you go, mate. Yep, so we're going to dice this. We're going to give ourselves a decent length from the vehicle and we're going to chop it there. Right, this surplus cable, this piece of cable here, we're going to curl that up and stash it inside the engine bay. So we've actually got something to play around with if we need to. Okay, so we're going to terminate this antenna now. And the first thing to do is to trim the end of this thing. Now I'll put in the description where you get your trimming tools from and your termination tools as well. What we're doing here is we're stripping off and we're exposing this center conductor. It's still covered by the dielectric, people. Okay, and then back here we're going to expose the braid. Now the braid is woven by its nature, so and what we're going to do, I find it a lot easier to actually unweave this braid. So we're going to fold it back so it's at 90 degrees to the cable, and we're just going to unweave it a little bit so that it's not quite as tangled in nature. And we're going to give it a little haircut so that it's there you go. Hang on, let's just pull this out. Just pull it out square so it's coming off the cable nice and square. That's it. So it's actually nice and square. I'll hold it that way. Alright, so there you go. You've now got a view of it. Now we're just going to give that a haircut, and we're going to haircut it at about 8mm. maybe 10 millimeters. Perfect. Now we're actually going to fold that braid back over the black outer. So I'll get you to fold that back over the black outer, and you just draw it down over the black outer. Just like that. Perfect. Now this is the critical piece. This requires the use of a precise measuring instrument. This is called a ruler. So we're going to measure from the shoulder. We're going to measure 70 millimeters, which is the length that we were instructed to right here on the diagram, and it actually tells you to measure it. And then we're going to double check this length, because this length is very important to the correct tuning of this antenna. So you put the ruler onto the shoulder, and that looks like it's 71 millimeters, so just lop a millimeter off, and then we'll measure it again. Alright, measure it again. There you go, exactly 70 millimeters. Now you'll notice that this inner part of this dielectric, where the conductor actually is actually inside that. You notice we haven't stripped anything. There's no requirement to strip anything further than that, and there's no instruction to do so on the instruction sheet. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to terminate the antenna. This cable goes up the inside of this antenna and literally just screws on. There's actually a thread up inside here. Start winding, it'll go in there. There you go. And then the braid, which we folded over the outside of the black outer cable jacket, now gets grabbed by the thread, and the antenna is wound right in, and the instructions tell you you wind until you feel it stop on the shoulder, which is actually internally within this section here. When it stops on the shoulder, the length up the inside of here, the 70 millimeters up the inside of here, is in the correct position. Okay, so that's a terminated antenna. Now we're only halfway there. The next step is we need to actually trim the length of the stainless steel wire here by chopping a section off the bottom, and that trimming is done as per our chart. We know from experience, because we've done a few of these antennas, that the trim length is for the E-band, the Forestry brand, is approximately 940 millimeters. Now I highly recommend that you don't cut it at 940 millimeters unless you know what you're doing. What I recommend you do is you cut it slightly longer, perhaps 980 millimeters, and then use a VSWR meter to trim it till you get your VSWR correct. Okay, so we've actually put our antenna out here on the mudguard. Now what we're going to do initially, before we test the antenna, is we're going to take a cord from our radio, and we're going to go through our VSWR meter, and because I'm old fashioned, this is an old fashioned Bird 43 meter, and we're going to put an RF load in it. Now an RF load, it is a perfect 50 ohm aerial effectively, this RF load, and we're going to measure in the forward direction, and we probably don't have enough light to actually see the meter, which is a bit of a disadvantage. But we've got 25 watts in the forward direction, and because this is an RF load, we'll turn the meter around and see what's reflected, just out of curiosity. And indeed, we have no reflected power at all, which is what we'd expect from an RF load. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to replace this RF load with our aerial, and we'll do some further tests. Okay, so this is our first test. We're using Rainier 57, which is 150.76250, and we have our aerial trimmed at 900. Our aerial is trimmed at 980 millimeters, and we're just going to have a look at the reflected power. And we'll just key this up, and we'll see the reflected power comes up to nearly 2.5 watts. So what we need to do is we need to trim the aerial until that reflected power drops away. Okay, so we know the aerial's 980 millimeters or thereabouts, and we're just going to nip say 10 millimeters off the end of this aerial. We're just going to pull this out of here and nip 10 mil off the end, and we'll go back and have a look at our reflected power and see if our reflected power is dropping away. Leaning on the old tool, there you go, nip that off. Righto, stand it back in here and do the grub screw up again. Cool, fingers clear. We'll go back inside. And we're not interested in the forward power, but we're very interested in the reverse power. There we go, it's dropped substantially in actual fact. So we might do that again. We just nip a little bit more off. Yep, out there. Point a safe direction. Come out of the tool fairly high velocity. Okay. Back into the base. Wind her up tight. Keep your fingers clear. Tighten her up. Cool. That's it. Now we're going to have a look at the reflected power. We're not interested in forward power. We want to know what reflected power is. What we're doing here is we're actually trimming for least reflected power. There you go. It's dropped off quite considerably. That's less than 1 watt. It's about 3/4 of a watt at the moment. Now what we're going to do now is we're actually just going to check things on several other frequencies in the E-band, just to make sure that the frequency at the bottom end, which is 150, is just as good as the frequency in the middle, about 153 megs, and we'll pick a frequency up at 155 megs and check there as well. We might have to just trim this a little bit more. Now, as the frequency increases, the aerial needs to get shorter, and you'll see that from the tuning chart supplied with the antenna. So we're going to continue nipping little bits off this antenna until this reflected power at 155 megs drops off. Actually, what I will get you to do is just get your tape measure out, and we'll just see what that measurement actually is, because there's no point in continuing to chop pieces off the antenna if we know we're getting well past the point where we should be. So have we got to 940 mil yet?
We're at 940 mil.
We're at 940 mil. Okay. Alright, so same thing again. We'll nip about, I don't know, 10 mil. Now you'll notice we're actually nipping it off the butt of the antenna, not the tip.
Got there.
Yep, that'll do. That's it. Put it back in here. Okay, we'll come round to the vehicle again, and so we're at 155 megs. Our reflected power is actually almost exactly the same. It's a little unusual. Anyway, we'll go to 150 megs. Oh, we've got an improvement at 150 megs. There you go, but at 155 megs, we didn't move much at all. Let's go back to our 155 meg frequency. Yeah, okay, so we might do the same thing again and just nip a little bit more, because 155 megs is higher than a higher frequency than 150. It's 5 megs higher. Therefore, the antenna should be shorter for it to trim. Yep, so we'll just nip a little bit more. Because you get to this point of decreasing returns. Well, it's actually not bad. There's almost no reflected power at 150 megs. Well, we might do that again. Why not? Let's go up to 155 again. 155, fingers off the antenna. Got a little bit of wind here now. I've got foam on the microphone on my camera, but you'll probably pick the wind up in the video. Or deteriorating returns, I guess. At this point we might leave it well alone. At 150 megs, 150 megs, where are we? We are using Rainier 57, which is 157.6250. And hey, yeah, there's the reflected power. We've got no reflected power at all at 150 megs. That's absolutely astounding. But we've got a little bit of reflected power at 155 megs. And I think we'll call it quits at that.